The Marathon County Infrastructure Committee to order. Would everybody please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Number 3 is public comment. Is there anyone wishing to have public comment? I didn't receive anything. Is there anybody on WebEx that has any public comment? All right, then we'll move on to number 4. Approval of the minutes of the May 5th, 2022 Infrastructure Committee meeting. They're in your packet. Motion by Robinson.
I'll second.
Second by Hardinger. Any discussion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Moving on to 5, policy issue discussion and potential committee determination. 5A, the 2050 Transportation Sustainable Planning Continued Review of North Central Regional Planning Report and discussion on the next steps. And I believe Jim and
I'll start the discussion at least. One of the reasons for it being placed again on the agenda today is just for a chance for you to review and comment. My ask today is pretty much maybe some homework for everybody here at the table. Kevin, Dave Mack, or myself have not sat down and memorized the whole 140-page document yet. So if you do have questions, just feel free to reach out to us and ask us those questions. I don't want to sit here today and have you start asking us questions and we're fumbling through the whole document trying to piece some questions together. But we do need to start moving on this. One of the reasons behind that is shortly, I'm assuming I'm going to be getting an email from Lance and Christie to say start working on your 2023 budget. And I'll give you a small example. In the back of this document, it talks about sealing roads. I believe in the document, it talks about $945,000 for sealing roads. So that'd be about a $600,000 increase for us. We're right about $350,000 at this current point. So, you know, if we want to follow the document and improve it, there's going to be some real dollars behind that. So where do we go from here as far as what the document states and where we want to go, because there is a large discrepancy between these two, between the documents. It also speaks regarding the safety plan in this document. You know, do we want to start working on the safety plan? We had a project that we were going to complete this year, part of the safety project, the first one on the list. We ran into some DNR and Corps of Engineer issues out there with mitigation, so that project has already been probably pushed back 1 year if we want to do the project. Again, that project now, if we need to mitigate some lands, where the project cost has probably tripled from what the document said. So we need to start following the document or get some directions from this committee.
thank you. Supervisor Robinson?
Jim, I think one of the things that would help is, you know, we started to talk about where the revenue sources were, and we, you know, they talked about the vehicle registration fee being constant or level, and what they failed to say is that general transportation aids were level basically for the last 10 years. But I think one of the things that was driving this was the work that the meeting that you set up with Tim, was it Rampart, you know, as an expert on the how do we maximize the general transportation assistance through the DOT. And I think a presentation about how our spending ties into state reimbursement would be helpful for us to put the plan in context, because what we were trying to do is to increase the level of transportation aids, because what happens invariably is every tight budget, we cut the highway budget, which has a 6-year impact on us, and I think it would be important for this committee and ultimately the county board to understand how, if we are deliberate in our approach, we can increase the state level of contribution and therefore decrease the reliance on the county levy. So I would ask if we could, sort of highlight the fiscal aspects of the plan. What are our revenue sources? What are we, from the levy, from the wheel tax, from general transportation aids, from the various aid programs, and how would this plan help with that? How can we capitalize on the bipartisan infrastructure law to meet some of those short-term needs? Or there, might that lead to an acceleration of projects to take advantage of that from a planning perspective? I think that would be very helpful to the committee.
Thank you. Any other ideas, discussion? I just have one question. On reviewing the plan, does this take into account the comp plan and the strategic plan? Is there, it was mentioned in there a couple times, but is this something we should be looking at as far as implementing our comp plan or strategic plan?
The one area that really addresses is the safety plan that's part of this. This County-wide Highway 2050 plan includes our safety program, which follows our strategic planning.
All right, thank you. And I agree. I think we're going to have to continue to discuss this so we can have some movement or some type of direction on this plan.
If I could, Chair, also, the project, our strategic plans, it talks about maintaining our roadway systems. And, again, if you look at that very back page of this, it talks about the ceiling that I mentioned earlier. That's all part of maintaining our infrastructure to keep it in the safest travel way we have. And that PACER rating that our goal of 7, we need to do all the crack filling, the maintenance, everything we have in this document to maintain that. So it's all part of the strategic plan. I did receive a call from North Central Planning this morning. They said if, he has a presentation 3/4 of the way done, and anytime that he would like the presentation on the plan itself, he could also present that.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion, ideas, suggestions? Administrator Leonard.
I just want to emphasize again what Jim just referenced. It's in your packet, it's page 128 of 169, but it's a chart, or a table, I should say, titled 2050 County Highway Network Future Maintenance Cost Projection Detail. And that's that gap that Jim is talking about when you look at the far right column, and it charts out all the various, in every column to the left, it shows you how we're spending those funds. And over time, you'll see that the shortfall that would exist if you choose, again, this is a policy question, service level is a policy question. PACER rating is 7 as a goal, that's set by the board. But those policy questions, do you want to maintain that level of service and maintain the network you have? We charted out, working with North Central Regional Planning, this is the cost currently, and this is that projected gap over the next 25, 27 years. And you'll see that gap widens substantially. And as Supervisor Robinson referenced, historically, general transportation aids have not kept pace to maintain a standard shortfall. It continues to grow. The vehicle registration fee, as Supervisor Robinson referenced, is not set to increase by any measure over time. It's not set to CPI or some form of inflation. And our tax levy, the other primary component of funding for highway costs, also is limited in terms of growth potential based on Wisconsin's levy limit. So you'll see, when you look out to 2050, you're approaching $10 million if all things stay the same. But even in the next 7 years, you're at over $2 million of a shortfall. So that, again, is one of those big areas. We can present you with the options, and I think Supervisor Robinson made some good suggestions. We'll make sure we bring you those presentations from North Central Wisconsin Regional Planning, and we'll develop a couple of options relative to funding streams. But at the end of the day, the service level that has been set as a policy by the board is that PACER rating is 7. So if that doesn't change, we need to find a financing plan that accomplishes the goals of the board. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any other discussion? All right, thank you. Moving on to number 6, operational functions required by statute, ordinance, resolution, or policy. We have none. Moving on to number 7, educational presentation and committee discussion. A1, or A is potential updates on the 2018-2022 strategic plan. And so today, I wanted to have a discussion with our committee on the strategic plan and the comp plan. I am going to each of the standing committees with the same requests. And I know that there are several new members on this committee, so I just want to explain briefly where we are with the strategic plan and the comp plan. The comprehensive plan was adopted by the county board in 2016. This is a 20-year plan that will help guide the county leaders in making decisions on a wide array of issues. That will also help Marathon County be the healthiest, safest, and most prosperous county in the state. Now, the comp plan consists of 64 objectives. This is the full packet as far as the comp plan. This is the executive copy. Does everybody have a copy of this? Okay. And I know the comp plan is online, and Administrator Leonard, if you want to show them how to get to that. Sure. But I'll continue with that. But like I said, there are 64 objectives, and I think 208 strategies and approximately 190 pages. The strategic plan is 23 pages, 12 of the 64 objectives are in the strategic plan. And the strategic plan is a 5-year plan. And this 5 years is due to expire the end of this year, because 2018-2022 strategic plan. I've had discussions with Chairman Gibbs and Administrator Leonard about the strategic plan expiring the end of this year, and we all feel that this strategic plan should not be scrapped but updated. So that leads me to a couple questions that Administrator Leonard and Chair Gibbs and myself came up with, and they're in your packet on the agenda. The 3 questions. Now, many things have changed since this strategic plan was adopted in 2018, like the pandemic, technology, and of course, new supervisors. So the 3 questions that are on the agenda are the 3 questions that that I'm asking each standing committee to consider. I don't expect answers at this meeting, but certainly if you have ideas, I would like to hear what those ideas are as far as updating this strategic plan. The first question is, what new strategies need to be added to the existing objectives in the plan? And B is, should any of the strategies under your objectives be prioritized in this strategic plan? And the Infrastructure Committee is the lead committee for 5.2, or actually you share the lead with EEED on 8.7, which strives to provide affordable, reliable, high-speed internet access through the county. And I know Supervisor Robinson has been keeping this committee up to date with what's going on with that objectives. And then the last objective that infrastructure is a lead committee for is 10.12, maintain infrastructure to support economic growth. So what I'm asking committees to do is look at these three questions, and if they have any ideas, and we have new supervisors on here, on this committee and actually all the committees, so there may be some different objectives that they feel should be added to the strategic plan. And like I said, we have 12 out of the 64. The idea was to try to concentrate on these 12 issues or objectives that at that time were the number one policies or issues that the county board wanted to deal with. Now, yesterday at Health and Human Services, we had quite a long discussion, and it was a good discussion. And actually, 4.1, which is in the comp plan, and do you want to bring that up? Yeah, Administrator Leonard will bring that up with the it's under the chapter of community care, community character. And anyways, 4.1 describes to support local municipalities to, well, actually, number one, promote a variety of safe and affordable housing options that meets the needs of the community members. And my question is, to this committee, is that issue something that infrastructure could have an impact on, or is there some other one of the other objectives, the 64 objectives? Do you feel there should be one of those that should be brought forward and put on the strategic plan, if we extend the 5-year plan? Because, like I said, it's up at the end of this year. But our opinions from the chair and Administrator Leonard and myself were to extend this strategic plan, because a lot of things the last 2 years, our priorities were focused on a lot of other things than the strategic plan because of the pandemic. So is there any discussion? And like I said, I don't know what this committee thinks about Chapter 4 with promoting safe and affordable housing to meet the needs of all community members. Any ideas on that from this committee, or any other ideas? Supervisor Hardinger?
Thank you, Chair. Part of the discussion that we had at the last meeting was about the 2018 strategic plan that was initiated.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was a 2020 update, kind of a touch on that plan from the department heads and the administration as that plan was developing. And then, of course, that was, COVID. We had the last 2 years. So part of the discussion that we had was another evaluation with the strategic plan that we have in place. Some feedback from the department heads and the administration for the objectives that they had outlined in that strategic plan, to see how they were developing, or if we needed to change course on certain parts of that. So my question is another evaluation of those objectives something that we're going to be able to get some feedback from the department heads prior to extending out the strategic plan to make sure that we're moving in the right direction?
That's a great question, and that came up yesterday too, and Administrator Leonard will explain that. Thank you.
That's a great point. So I've reached out to each of the department heads that, on that chart that Vice Chair McEwen's talking about, where it identifies lead committees and support committees. There's also the far right column as lead departments. Each of the departments, and I just sent the email kind of framing out exactly what I was looking for last night. So Jim probably has it. That essentially what I'm asking them to do in response to your comments and the discussion at the committees is take each strategy for we'll just pull up one to put on the screen to show. So for example, for 3.3, I'm asking the department heads to provide a brief update with respect to the progress made on each strategy, in pursuit of each strategy, that is in addition to the progress that was made in the 2020 update. Then at the same time, I'm also asking them to do an update relative to each outcome measure that's listed at the bottom of the document. So the most up-to-date information, for example, on outcome measure number 1, relative to graduation rate. So you'll have at least a snapshot in time, the most up-to-date snapshot in time. And I asked them to use their best efforts to get that done by the end of this month so that we can make presentations. I don't know if that's a reasonable ask in light of everything else they have going on. But that was the kind of how I framed it to them in an email to, again, let's not duplicate the effort that we put into the 2020 annual update, but what progress has been made in addition to that progress for each of the respective strategies for each objective. And I did also say, if when you look through, the department heads look through the 2020 update document, if there's something, for example, in 3.3, the School-Based Mental Health Consortium, if something fundamentally important has happened since this 2020 update relative to the School-Based Mental Health Consortium, provide a brief couple sentences of additional information there. But my hope is to have that compiled by the end of the month. Whether I can get that then to each of the committees in July or August is kind of yet to be seen. But hopefully we can make some progress on getting that information to the committees relatively soon.
Thank you.
Thank you, Administrator.
Thank you. The other objective that we discussed at Health and Human Services yesterday also was under Chapter 10, Education, Workforce Development, and Economic Development, would be 10.1A, develop policies that support affordable, high-quality childcare. And the reason we had the discussion is lately on the news, there's been several news articles or interviews with people in Marathon County, young millennials that are working, that have young children, that are having a very difficult time with getting high-quality, affordable childcare. And those were just two of the things that I think maybe or could be added to or somehow worked into the strategic plan that we have now. My question for this committee, our committee, is what topics, has there been anything that you feel has come up in the last year, last 2 years, that possibly could be something that needs to be added to our strategic plan, which is, like I said, and we like you said, the infrastructure committee are designated for the lead committee for 2 of the 12 objectives. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't be looking at the whole strategic plan, because I know the last update that we had with infrastructure, there was quite a few areas that this infrastructure committee did take action on or develop policies that affected other parts of that strategic plan. So like I said, is there anything that, that you feel warrants maybe bringing up to the strategic plan? Supervisor Robinson?
It's a peripheral issue to this committee, but it deals with, under Chapter 10, the whole issue of workforce development goal. And I think that we need to, whether it's this committee or others, I know Jim's had a tough time recruiting and retaining staff, and I think we just have to elevate that. I know we're doing some things, but I think that needs to be front and center as we look at how do we attract and retain the best talent, and are there some innovative ways that we can go about recruitment and development of that staff.
Thank you. And that was couple of the news articles that I saw, some of these young millennials or these younger people that have infants or young children, they're having a difficult time finding childcare, and they can't work because they have to, stay home to take care of their kids. And like I said, and I know there was a Marathon County employee that was on the news about it, that they were having a difficult time getting child care. Had to juggle their schedule around with the county. So I think, that one in the housing, affordable housing, and I know they've been building quite a few different apartments or, multi-family units in the area, but there's been articles about the homeless. There are people that are homeless, in Marathon County and Waasa. So, like I said, I would welcome any suggestions from this committee on any of the 64, or even if it's not one of the 64, something else that came up that, might warrant bringing up to the strategic plan. Supervisor Dickinson?
So one thing that is directly related to us is the airport, and the airport is looking at bringing in low-cost carrier. I don't know if that's something we need to specifically put into our plan to say, utilizing the airport to bring in workforce, right, for the opportunity to freely travel to some of these areas where they can't do that now, right? So people want to be able to travel, whether at leisure or business. So that would be something that I would look at. How are we utilizing the airport to drive our infrastructure, our economic, and our community character? Because I think it is a pretty important part of who we are.
Thank you. And I believe at maybe 2 months ago, we authorized some funding to the airport to utilize to attempt to attract one of these low fare airlines into there. I don't know, can we do more? But that's a very good point, because that would lead to, and a lot of the travel at the airport there is business, commercial travel. Go ahead.
Just as a follow-up, being on the airport board, you've got Mosinee going to be building, looks like they're building a hotel. So if you think about all that infrastructure around where the airport is to get people coming east, west, north, south, other opportunities for business in that area. They have their industrial park, but is there other stuff that we can look at in that area to maybe develop that from the county's perspective? So I will add, when you get to these other things like community character or that sort of thing, it sounds so vague. And we were just discussing having goals that are vague that can't be met when it came to reducing crashes and that sort of thing. So I would be careful about how we put that in as our focus. I mean, how do you? And even in the plan, if you read under community character, it's very vague. It's this kind of esoteric thought about what is this area we're living in. So if we're going to do something like that, there has to be a focus. Are we going to be the leading child care provider in, north central Wisconsin? Are we going to be the leading affordable housing provider in north central Wisconsin? I don't know where we're going with those topics. They seem very vague. So there would have to be some metrics associated with that. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Hardinger.
You can go.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. No, to add on to that, and in direct relation to the affordable housing, this is a conversation that we had just a couple weeks ago at the village level as part of our development plan in the area, and what is affordable housing, especially considering the inflation and everything in the market right now. Something that would have been affordable to somebody at $600 a month for rent, and you're looking at most apartments that are out for rent right now, it's $1,100, $1,200. So that's something that we're looking at. And I agree. I think, if we're going to make that statement that, we need affordable housing, to kind of get an idea of what affordable housing really is and how do we establish that, because that's something that I know a lot of the local communities are dealing with right now is, how do we bring people into that area and how do we set that and how do we work with developers and how do we figure out how to establish it. But that was my first statement. My second question is, I believe is the county currently doing or working with somebody to create a census in our area? I came across something at another meeting, which it's kind of like a mini census report as far as economics and workforce within the area. And I'm not sure if it came through the administrator's desk or who's leading it, but if this is something that I could probably bring back a little more information, but I didn't know if anybody else had. I just caught a little snippet of it, so I apologize. I don't have more information on it, but it sounded like something the county was a part of. So it sounded like a mini census to get established on our workforce and our economic and maybe areas that would help give us information for affordable housing, something that we could use for details.
Yeah, I'm not aware of it, but Administrator Leonard, if you are.
I wanted to follow up, if I could, Mr. Chair. I think Supervisor Dickinson's points about, articulating, these are relatively vague and aspirational. Certainly the objectives are aspirational. The strategies provide some framework, but, the thing that, and this is the statement I made, paraphrased, of course, yesterday to Health and Human Services, a lot of the issue on the staff side is one of resource allocation. Like, we need to know what's important to you, and then we'll work to try to figure out what might be a strategy to achieve the goal. We'll come back and present that strategy to you. You will then have to pay for it. That's always the question, right? Where do you allocate your funds? But I think Supervisor Dickinson's points on affordable housing are very, very sound, and childcare as well. The strategy of promoting high-quality, affordable childcare, the real question is, well, how do we do that? And that's thinking back to the presentation from Wisconsin Counties Association at your orientation, that's really, once you tell us this is important, we'll go back and try to find ways to do that. On the childcare piece, for example, that at the end of last term was identified as a priority by the Extension Education Economic Development Committee, ultimately built into the administrator's work plan, because again, your strategic plan flows from your comp plan, and I build my annual work plan from the strategic plan based on the discussion you have and you as a board approve it. Childcare was in there, so we have been doing some things trying to figure out what are some strategies that we might be able to pursue, and in fact, in a couple of hours in this room, I don't know if anyone saw the press release, we applied for a grant. Marathon County, along with more than 15 local partners, applied for a grant. We are one of the grant recipients that Secretary Designee of the Department of Children and Families is going to be here announcing that we are getting the grant today. So it's a grant to help us find a path to try to address the issue, which to Supervisor Dickinson's point, and I think it demonstrates how well this comprehensive plan was put together. You identified a lot of challenges that at the time were on the horizon. Well, the horizon is here. Affordable housing's an issue. We just need you to identify, is this a priority issue or not? Is something like Jim referenced with the 2050 sustainability plan, is it more important that staff try to find a funding strategy to execute the roadway improvements based on the service level that you want? With respect to your question on the housing census, I do recall the county did provide some funding to North Central Wisconsin Regional Planning for a housing study. We can check to see where they're at on the completion of that. I know the person that was leading that was Carrie Edmondson. She now works for the city of Stevens Point, I believe. Stevens Point or Plover, or Wisconsin Rapids. I think it's Wisconsin Rapids. So we can check on where that study is. But to your point, I know local municipalities are having similar conversations. And I've been involved tangentially in some of those, and I think we do have some options to start to think about how can we utilize, what tools can we bring to the table. One of the big ones, not to delve into this in too much detail, is we have a backlog of tax deed properties, and the state recently changed the law with respect to how tax deed properties how the divestment of those works for the county. So there are some strategies we could use with kind of cleaning up that backlog, which is more than 10 years in the making, but cleaning up that backlog and how do we deploy those properties strategically to assist the community and municipalities. But also, when I look at the organization internally, we do rent for some of our programs that we deliver from local housing providers, local landlords. To the extent we can utilize properties that we could in the near future own to take us out of the market, in my mind, helps the market, right? I mean, any increase in supply, whether it's market rate housing or affordable subsidized housing or high end, right now there's just a significant shortage of housing. So any housing, I think, helps. Where do we target our time, I think, is to Supervisor Dickinson's point, one of the things we're gonna need direction from you on. But I do think there are some options out there. The whole point of this exercise for all the committees and ultimately for the board, because this is gonna have to go through the board, is telling staff, where do you want us to spend your time? Because our time is very finite. Thank you.
Thank you, Administrator. And just one more caveat, I'm sorry, Chair. So as far as the Infrastructure Committee's responsibility in that role, it would mostly be for transportation purposes to make sure the roadways to those facilities, to those areas are up to par so that people can transport to and from. Is that basically the extent of the Infrastructure Committee?
Yes, and well, and that's under 10.12. It specifies that maintain infrastructure to support economic growth. What does that mean? Yeah, right. So, and so that's our job. Supervisor Robinson, did you have a comment?
Well, just picking up on Supervisor Dickinson's thought process, and as it relates to safety, and we had to reduce crash rates by 5%. Perhaps something we should be looking at is we've already developed, but implement and fund the county safety plan. Maybe that needs to be our objective, to bring a little bit more specificity to it, and give the commitment to Jim for the budgeting purposes. But I would throw that out there as a suggestion on how we could rework that.
Thank you, and I'm glad you brought that up, and Supervisor Dickinson, that percentage, that 5%. I just, how do you quantify that? I mean, how do you? I mean, I know I talked to Jim about this. They got the safety plan that's in place. Has the 5% been accomplished? I don't know, but like I said, I just think the percentage is a little hard to to justify. But that's my opinion on the percentage. Any other suggestions on that? Well, a couple last things on the strategic plan. I encourage you to look at the. I'm sorry. Somebody got a question? Oh. Okay. To look at the life plan, the life report, I should say. This one is the current one. It's 2019 to 2021. I don't know if they're going to come out every 2 years. They usually come out with a new one, but. A lot of their call to actions masks a lot of our priorities, and they have alcohol. They got child care list that was discussed back in 2019 already about child care. They're experiencing a decrease in child programs. So it's been around, and like I said, I'm not suggesting that we be the child care or affordable housing county in Wisconsin, but it does go along with our economic development, and like I said, a lot of people are having issues, especially that have young children, with getting qualified child care. And I've talked to a couple people, and they said their child care wait is approximately 2 years to get their kids into some of these child care facilities. So like I said, I do think it's something that, my personal opinion is something we look at now, how infrastructure, can do something to alleviate that. I'm not sure, but anyways, it came up at Health and Human Services yesterday also. And then one other thing, Administrator Leonard mentioned it, his work plan, the administrator's work plan, is based on our strategic and comp plan. So I would encourage you to look at the administrator's work plan. It's almost as long as the comp plan, but, I mean, not quite, but there's quite a few objectives on his work plan. So, but good discussion, thank you. Is there any other discussion on the comp plan or the strategic plan? Supervisor Dickinson?
I just want to make a comment. I would hope that throughout our board, we don't have the mindset that we are to be providing childcare or providing affordable housing or anything like that. I think those are lofty ideas and, you know, these goals to help people, but it concerns me that someone would be thinking along those lines. If you say there's a 2-year wait for childcare, I guess I would question why organizations aren't stepping up, why individuals aren't stepping up to have businesses, why schools aren't stepping up to provide such care. Some schools do have extended kind of pre-K and other things. So I think while we can assist with potentially selling properties or providing, you know, ways to maybe train people in childcare and those kinds of things through our schools. Yeah, I don't think we need to be in that business. Thank you.
Thank you, and good comments. I do want to emphasize that I'm not insinuating that we do that. In fact, I'm on the Workforce Development Board, and they have a program that they signed up through the state where people can get training and grants for childcare businesses. And I think what our role is to direct these people in the right direction, not that we're going to sponsor childcare facilities or anything like that. And I agree with you, Supervisor Dickinson. But I think if we have opportunities that we can have people reach out to these different organizations, you know, and that would be, you know, something that I think we could do. And I don't think we should open a childcare facility or anything like that. But I agree with you that that's not our role is in county government. So any other comments? All right, thank you. So next month, I'll be back anyways, but I'll be back at all the committees to discuss these updates on these 3 questions as far as what should be added or brought forward from the 64 objectives that are in the comp plan to possibly bring them up to the strategic plan. So if you could review those, that would be great before our next meeting. Supervisor Hardinger, you got that, like, what did he just say?
Yeah, sorry, Chair. So are we going to add a 4th point then, the feedback from the department heads? Or is that going to be included in one of those 3 points?
I will certainly make sure that as soon as I get all the information from department heads, all the committees have it.
Okay.
The other place, there was a question yesterday at one of the committees about data, and I think the vice chair referenced the life report, which it's available online. It's not done by the county, it's done by the United Way. They have some information within it. Also, Marathon County Pulse, which is if you just search Marathon County Pulse, that has health-related data. It's used through the health department, and it's somewhat utilized for the health rankings that perhaps you recently saw reported in the news locally. But if there are other pieces of data that you're looking for, really my hope is to be able to provide data on all of the outcome measures that were identified in the strategic plan. But at least to this point, we don't have a data dashboard for all of our departments and all of our programs. That too is one of the things on the work plan that I'm hoping to have a strategy to accomplish in the 2023 budget that I present. But if you do have specific things that are vitally important, please reach out and let me know, and I'll do my best to get that for you.
Thank you, Administrator. Yeah, because even if it was just an executive summary of their feedback on how the objectives of the strategic plan are impacting them and whether or not they need to pivot. I think that'll also help, obviously, with what, the budget for the next year would be, depending on what that plan change would be.
Thank you.
Understood. Thank you.
And one other point, there is a template that I've encouraged standing committees to use to keep track of some of the progress or the implementation of the strategic plan. And the infrastructure committee, I have a list. I know Supervisor Robinson on HR Finance had quite a long list of things that that HR Finance Committee had accomplished. So some of these outcomes, some of these strategies have been used, and that, that could be part of the update so that the committees know where they're at on them. Some of the outcome measures were due to expire in 2019. We had some in 2020, some in 2021, I believe. So some of those outcome measures, I guess it would be good to know if they were accomplished, and do they need to be, on the strategic plan? It's already been accomplished. Not that we don't want them to go away, but like I said, I do have. If you want to see a good template that's been completed, ERC committee, because they actually developed that template. Their previous director developed that template, and it's filled out and it's pretty up to date. They've been keeping track of that, and I intend on doing that for this committee. From the information I got, I think it was in November or December, we had an update, and there was a lot of information provided. I don't know if you remember that. I wasn't on the committee at that time, but I came to the meeting, but then we had a problem with audio or technology, and we couldn't complete the meeting. So, but anyways, yeah, I just think that that's a good way of judging. People can look at what other committees have done. So, Supervisor, go ahead.
I agree with you, Chair, and I think, honestly, just having that executive report for that would also give a testament to the accomplishments of the county and what we've been able to push through in the last couple of years, the developments that we make, and that we're doing our jobs, and that the administration, the staff here is doing their jobs. And I think that that'd be an important thing to relate to the public as well, not only just us for our decision-making purposes.
Exactly. Thank you for those comments. Is there any other discussion on the strategic plan, comp plan? Okay, well, thank you. And we'll keep moving forward on that. Moving on to 7B, Highway Department 2023 CIP requests.
There are several CIP requests in your packet. We no longer need to approve this. This is just for information, but our number one request for 2023 is the Highway K project that we've been working and planning for the last few years on. That's from the Cater Drive to the North County line. The bridges are being built this year. That is a project right now. Our estimates, which aren't final estimates, are about $9,437,000 for that project, of which we've, through different sources, STP Urban, HISUP, which is our safety, STP Rural, multi-local, modal, and some other ones, we've obtained $4,330,000 of that $9.5 million through other sources. So we hit every possible bank out there to get the funding in line, but we're still about $5 million short for that project for 2023. That's our number one request into the committee. Another request is a bridge replacement out on Coney Trunk Highway H, north of Hard Rock Quarry up there. And Kim, could you go to pages like 129, 130, 131? It's a bridge out there. It's got a 30-ton posting on it. It's in, like I said, within a quarter of a mile of a major gravel quarry. The bridge has outlived its useful life. I believe the bridge was built in 1938. Bridges have sufficiency ratings anywhere from 0 to 100. This one's at 29.8. We could put it into a federal program, which is about a 4 or 5 year process. We have the capability. In the past, we've built a lot of bridges like this with our own forces at a reduced cost and it's time savings. So if you could flip the page, I think it's 130 or the next pit, 131. I know many of you aren't bridge structure engineers, but when you have holes in your bridge girders, that's not a good thing. We have holes through the girders. The outside girders are really bad, and we have major web loss between the other ones too. So it's a bridge that either we're going to continue to lowering that posting or we need to replace that, and we can replace that with our own forces and have it done by next fall if the CIP request goes through. There's 3 other requests that was in your packet. County Trunk Highway T, County Trunk Highway J, County Trunk Highway X. Those are all projects that were submitted to the 2022, the first request in 2022 for the BIL money. There was 134 projects submitted into the state for funding, which they said they had a lot of money there. All these projects are going to get funded. 11 projects ended up getting funded in the entire state of Wisconsin. I was able to resubmit. There was another deadline, which is actually tomorrow. I resubmitted. You could resubmit these same projects. So I resubmitted these projects. Our hope and our request to the Secretary's office is the deadline was tomorrow, June 3rd is tomorrow, June 3rd for these projects. They're supposed to let us know by August 1st if we've received these projects or not. These are 80-20 split, so we would be looking at a 20% our cost share for these projects for 2023 if we would be selected for these projects. My fear is it's going to run in a tight time deadline with the budget. In all my years at the department, when I put these in, most requests, and it's an odd year this year, most of these requests are due October. And they said they'll have our answers of who the selection will be by December 1st. The earliest I've ever seen them is in March. So our request to the Secretary's office is, right now you say you're going to tell us August 1st who has projects selected. We need to know by August 1st because we need to know for our 2023 budget. So these 3 projects I just spoke about, the X, J, and T, they're up in the air if we're actually going to get the 80% funding. If we don't get the 80% funding, we won't be doing the projects next year. So it's they're a request, but they're pending a final decision on DOT, and hopefully we'll have that by budget time. One that was not in your packet that doesn't normally go in.
Jim, aren't they required to commit those dollars by the end of the federal fiscal year? And for the August 1 deadline? So aren't there some incentives for the DOT to turn those around quickly?
If they don't use them, we're going to give them to another state, so I would hope that they would have them budgeted out. We always do have a CIP request, and I never fill out paperwork for it, but Craig asked me to fill one out. We did put in a formal CIP request for our normal paving program. We normally pave about that 35 miles a year. Kevin and I kind of went through our projects next year, and with that increase of Highway K project, we wouldn't be doing that work ourselves, but we know there's a burden to the county fiscally. So we're going to back down on our paving program next year to about 24 miles of roads, which will also give us a chance to get caught up on some of the maintenance that we're falling behind. So, some of that sealing and stuff that you can see is an increase in our general maintenance account, our 278 account. You can probably see an increase in that because we're going to drop down on our paving a little bit to help hold those costs with the County Trunk Highway K project. In addition to that also is the rolling stock that is a normal request every year. It's a $957,600 we get every year for the last probably 12 years that program's been going on. I will be talking to Administrator Leonard and the CIP committee about doing something different. If people haven't realized prices have gone up in the last 12 years. We just put a quick little study together here of a few items that we have coming up in a few years. Tandem truck axle chassis have gone up 33% since one we purchased in 2012. The tandem dump body and snow equipment installed has gone up about 43%. We're sitting close to about $300,000 just for one tandem truck to be set up now for winter. A quad truck chassis has gone up 12% since 2014. The quad dump and hydraulic components only from 2017 to today's numbers have gone up 20%. A disc bind is for mowing the ditches have gone up 29% since 2013. A pickup truck that we just use normally, they've gone up 69% since 2012 when this program began. A motor grader, we purchased one in 2020, went up 6%. And we're a few years out at this point, but we're gonna probably be looking at a new paver down the road in 3-4 years. Since we purchased the last one in 2014, they've gone up 57%. A paver alone is gonna run us about $540,000 right now. And if we're only getting $957,000, it doesn't leave us much after we buy one piece of equipment. So we're probably gonna have to have those conversations.
Thank you. Thank you. Is there any questions for, go ahead, Supervisor Dickinson.
So what are we looking to approve right now? Nothing? These are just, it's just information?
Information.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, since the CIP committee has been eliminated, everything goes through HR, Finance, and Property. So those requests, but they don't have to be approved by the standing committees. They used to, but that no longer is required. So any other go ahead.
You have one more. So on the County K, it looked like there was money in there for safety, the HSIP. We talked a little bit about our safety plan earlier, and where that stands. So if we say we don't care about the safety part of it, we just want to repave it, right? I looked at the notes, it really needs to get redone, but if we just say just kind of repave it and, let's pass it off for a few years, do we lose that HSIP money?
Yes.
Which is about 1 point,
Well, yeah,
it's over $1 million, right? 1.2,
correct, yeah.
1.5. Okay, thank you.
that'd go away.
All right, thank you. Any other questions, Jim? All right. Then moving on to 7C, County Highway X right-of-way rolling request for expenditures of $49,476.
Both County Truck Highway X and 28th Avenue, we have funds set up there. We have a balance sitting there at $250,000 in case somebody ever comes along and wants to sell some right-of-way for future expansion, that we can buy it at that point. So last year on Highway X, we did buy a parcel for $49,476. So the normal process is every year, if we do have some expenditures out of either one of those accounts, it gets backfilled with that same amount to leave that balance of $250,000. So there'll be a request in there for a transfer of $49,476 to maintain that $250,000 in there for any future expansions of the County Giant X project.
Thank you. Any questions? Comments? Okay. Moving on to 7D, update on a meeting with the Village of Maine and the City of Waasa regarding 28th Avenue. Last Thursday, myself and Administrator Leonard and Jim Griesbach and Kevin, I met with the City of Waasa and a couple representatives from the Village of Maine about the continuing discussion we've had with 28th Avenue. And I'll let Jim explain a little bit what, I guess there was some type of end result, but not officially.
Well, seeing we're all government, we all have to come back to our board, so that's kind of where we left, where everybody was heading. We left the meeting, I believe, with kind of an understanding of the direction everybody was going to go. I'll work north to south. The Village of Maine decided that they feel it's in their best interest. Betty Heinisch was there along with one of the people from the village board. They felt that there was no need for a project in the Village of Maine, and they weren't going to pursue the corridor anymore, that they would probably going to present to their board that they would abandon that corridor, whatever process that would be through public hearing, and abandon the corridor in the Village of Maine. The city of Waasa, however, still feels like that's a viable project for them to relocate 28th Avenue going up the big steep hill. So there may be some misdirection when you get to the top of that road. If the city would ever go through the project and relocate 28th Avenue, shift it to the west to go up 30th to hit Waasa Ave and then come back, and then put a cul-de-sac on coming down Big Steepy on 28th Avenue. We had talked to them about transferring over the right-of-way that we've required over the years for that project, with the understanding if that project was not developed, and all of a sudden they decide, well, we're gonna go a different direction, and we would sell that land off, that those proceeds from that would come back to Marathon County, that they just couldn't, we're not gonna hand something over and have them sell it for, profit someday, so that would come back. So they're gonna take that to CISM for a presentation and talk to their committee about, possibility of taking over the southern portion of that road. And at the end of the day, Marathon County, the way my feeling was, Marathon County's gonna walk away saying, here's our contribution to the project. We have a set of plans that are about a 30%. We've spent a lot of money on right-of-way, we're gonna deed over. But at this point, we don't feel there's a need for Marathon County to have another road that's parallels Westwood Drive, which is a 4-lane facility, which would take relief off of 51 if needed. So that was my take on the meeting that we walked away, and I think there was a pretty good understanding by each party their next direction. If that would be the way we go, we're going to have to sit down with Corp Council to go through the process of transferring that corridor over to the city and the Village of Maine, how we would abandon that corridor in the Village of Maine. So
I think, Jim, you did a nice job giving that. I'm going to go back to one of the first things you said. Everyone in that meeting recognized they weren't the end-all decision-maker for their respective entities. So the Village of Maine is going to go back and have that conversation with their board, and they'll have to take formal action on whether or not, to Jim's point, they're not interested in pursuing kind of their version of that project. Similarly with the city of Waasa, I think, Jim did a nice job explaining kind of the decision-making process, starting with the city council committee. But that is a much more, they have more decision points and more things to consider. Not to get into the weeds here, but the current facility, the current 2-lane facility is in significant need of some updates. So they need to figure out, what does that couple-year plan look like? Are they going to really take some pretty significant prompt action to relocate the facility? Or are they going to develop an interim plan? But again, that's gonna have to work through the city process. I think Jim did a nice job. Again, if we are going to not be directly involved in the project, we would come to this committee and ultimately the full board with what that looks like to ultimately divest ourselves of the property that we have. And that's a policy decision at the end of the day, selling property, abandoning that corridor plan, and what level of partnership you're looking for from the city. We'll bring you back a proposal, and we'll follow your policy direction. But I think, again, Jim did a nice job laying out what those next steps look like, and I don't know if did we get a next meeting date scheduled, Jim, or just waiting for them to move forward with their committee meetings?
no, we didn't say it. We're just waiting for them to get the decisions. And with the Chief Center, just touch on that real quick. I did send an email to Carol this morning with an update. I sent her the 30% plans, saying that you may want to talk to the city of Waasa if they are going to go that route. That I sent them a set of plans. Becker Happy worked up a retaining wall. It's about a 7-foot retaining wall would be in front of their place that I believe they could develop what they want if they put in that wall. But again, that wall, I don't know the total lineal feet because there's different locations for a wall, but on the estimate, it was like $750,000 for that retaining wall. So that's a decision somebody at the city probably is going to need to be making for the Chief Center's plans. But I did send those plans out to Carol this morning and told her to pass them on to their architect to work with those.
Thank you. Any questions, discussion? I do have one question, and because I new on the infrastructure committee, how long has this process been going on as far as between the city and Maine and the county?
22 years,
Dave had black hair when it started.
probably about 22 years. I think around 2000 we started the process.
Thank you. Yeah, go ahead, Supervisor Gisselman.
So with regard to the 30th Avenue, that little, what you're anticipating somewhat of a different plan, is the county involved with that? Or is it just sort of, the process then would be for the county to deal with 28th Avenue, but is the county getting involved with the 30th Avenue plan that you sort of described?
Yes, that the original plan that Dave alludes to back in 2020 or 22, when that plan was developed, the plan already was to move it over to 30th Avenue. So that's where we purchased all the right-of-ways on 30th Avenue, and the plans have been done for 30th Avenue. So that's part of the process.
And the city of Waasa knows, and that's all been going through their planning process?
Yes, it is.
Okay, thank you.
That's going to go to CISM for them to decide.
We'll see that next week on our.
Thank you. Any other questions, discussion on that? All right. Thank you. Moving on to 7E, 2022 Culvert Bridge Aid Process.
I'll handle that. Let's start it off, and I'll pass it off to Kevin. I'll give you the history lesson, and then Kevin give you up-to-date things. A lot of people, when they see the Culvert Bridge Aid Program, they think the county is putting money into this program. It's a program that's been set up by statute to allow assistance between the municipalities to help with the cost of larger structures and bridges. State statute originally was any culvert over 48 inches, municipalities are within the program can ask for assistance, financial assistance. Probably 6-8 years ago, they dropped that requirement down to 36. It said it could be. Marathon County at that point decided that we were going to hold it at 48 inch culverts or larger for financial aid. The county runs the program, but we don't put any money into it. All the municipalities, there's probably, I believe, about 50-some municipalities out of the 60 we have in the county that participate in this. So I'll use the Town of Day, for example. Every year, the Town of Day is in a program. Every year, the residents of Town of Day help pay for the culvert. If they put a culvert in 48 inches or lot. So they may not put one in for years and years, but they're helping everybody who else is in that program submit them in, and they split it up between all the municipalities. What our part of the program is, if we're running it, we want to make sure that the culverts are placed right and they're needed in the right size. So the program's evolved over time. People request a project that hasn't changed. I used to go out and size them. Now Kevin does the hydraulics on them. What has changed is way back when we had former committees, I don't know if Craig was on any of those ventures or not, but the committee, after they were submitted, we would take a ride and go visit all 18 culverts or 20 culverts and bridges. We'd always stop at Bob Wiesman's, Supervisor Wiesman's house, and have some apple strudel and ice cream, and they would approve all the projects. They would be put in during the summer, and then fall, the committee would go out again for a nice ride. We would normally stop at Supervisor Dale Barco's house for some other rhubarb desserts, and they would get approved. I believe this committee, way back when, in about 2006, took the stand that nobody on the committee is a structural engineer, that they did not need to do that. So now we just do it as staff. The committee was approving them up to a few years ago, but at that point, it was just understood that Kevin or myself are looking at these, that's what your hire is for. So that's the process now is we just come and give you information of how many programs, how many people are in the program that year. You'll see a number at the end of the year on the budget for Culvert Bridge Aid. County, it's called County Culvert Bridge Aid, but again, there's 0 county dollars into it. It's split up between all the municipalities in the program. There is no levy cap on this, so it doesn't do anything to our budget. So if, we have a skyrocket number, it doesn't do anything to the county budget. But Kevin can kind of give you an update where we're sitting this year for the projects.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll also quickly hit on the schedule for this. We used to get those applications in April, and then by May had to have them approved, and kind of acknowledge that the April, May, June is kind of our busiest for our department time of year. So we push those back to October. I probably get 80 to 90% of them in October. Every year in spring, there's a few of them where somebody will have a culvert that either was questionable, marginal, or surprised them, and we usually work with those municipalities as best we can to still include those in the program if time permits. But then we also do a lot of coordination with the DNR for these. A lot of the townships, I don't know, left on their own would choose not to work with DNR on them, and we actually have a very, very good liaison through the DNR that covers Marathon County. So I do a lot of that legwork with her just because we have an ongoing relationship with all of our other work that we do. So our projects this year, we have a few that are down to as small as 48 inches, and then we also go all the way up. Jim had mentioned the 80-20 bridge program. Those projects also, like the design costs and things, they funnel through this as well. So we have 20-some projects this year. There's 6 of them that our crews will go out and do. As part of the program, the townships or villages can elect whether they're going to take the work on themselves or they can ask for our assistance on it. So we have a handful of projects our guys will do each year. Usually those are the bigger projects, 10 to 12 foot aluminum or steel culverts. We've done some box culverts. We have 4 runs of concrete elliptical pipe we're working with the city of Marshfield on, and we'll partner with those municipalities. Sometimes if they have expertise or if they have equipment that they can make use of that'll benefit both parties, we work with them quite a bit on that to kind of have some intergovernmental cooperation to get those projects built well and efficiently. So the spring of the year, we go through, get everything lined up, and then at the end of August and September 1st, all the final costs are due. So there's usually a bit of a rush there because we need those. We don't get those till September 1st, and then usually our September meeting, we go through that list and have you guys approve them. About half the years we're able to get that done. Other times there's only 3 or 4 days from when I'm getting them to when we're supposed to turn them around to you. Very frequently we'll end up having a special meeting just before your September county board meeting. That's essentially here's the final list, run through it and get this committee's approval before it goes on a county board. And it does have to go through those 2 steps because of the way it's tied into the budget for the county. September 1st is our meeting, so we'll end up having a special meeting this year, or else pushing out this regular meeting a week or 2 in order to accommodate that schedule. But I guess, do you guys have any questions on it?
This is Administrator Leonard. One thing, I apologize, Supervisor. I just put up on your screen, as Jim and Kevin both referenced, this is in you'll see this in the budget book, and you'll see it in the resolution ultimately that the county board publishes as part of the budget process and the ultimate resolution on the budget. But as Jim said, this is one of those exceptions, what we term them, exceptions to the levy limit, the county operating levy limit under Wisconsin statute. So if you look at section 660602, and it's on your screen, exception E3, the amount that a county levies in that year under, and it references another statute, for bridge and culvert construction and repair. So this, again, doesn't impact the county's operating levy limit. That's the thing when we talk about levy limits. Operating levy limit is the thing that is, we always have to contend with. When you hear me talk about a structural deficit, it's on the operating levy limit side. You have exceptions to the levy limit for things like what you levy to make payments to your public library system. That's the next one on the list. Also for debt service. That's probably the most important levy limit exception. Nevertheless, this is one of those other levy limit exceptions. Jim, and as Kevin referenced, the Highway Department works very closely with the towns because we recognize we're part of, it's intergovernmental cooperation at its finest, and intergovernmental cooperation is in your strategic plan. You have directed us to continue to do that. And we work closely with them to make sure that, again, the roadway network, recognizing the roadway network is built on all levels of roadways. It's the local roads, the county highway connectors, and then all the way up to those major arterials that we have running through our county. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Supervisor Straub, do you have a question?
Yeah, I just had a comment for Kevin, I guess. Is that your name, Kevin? Back during the election cycle, when I had thought that Pioneer Road in Cronenwetter they had a culvert reconstruction, I think the county did for them, and I thought I was representative of that particular area, but it turns out Rick Seefeld, after the redistricting went through, I had been brought to my attention by the voters out there that there was a reconstruct for a culvert just off of 153, just north, about a quarter mile from 153 on Pioneer Road. And they had a petition, 3-page petition of probably over 80 signatures where they felt that the old culvert had a guardrail and then the new culvert was without a guardrail. Is that something in their complaint? They felt that the new culvert without the handrail or guardrail was left a dangerous situation for them. I even went and took pictures of it, and they just put like a little white stake with a black tip on it to mark the where the culvert was. Is that something that should be reviewed again by the county for its safety purpose, or was am I making? I guess I don't know if I'm making any sense, but.
It can be, and we do look at that. Ultimately, they are the municipality's projects as the owner of it. We come in and do work essentially as a contractor, but the municipality is the owner of that. That project, I want to say that those were about 40-foot culverts with vertical head walls on them, and then they had a railing system on it. What we typically do then is we'll take that 40-foot pipe and go out to about 58 feet to get at least a 10-foot, sometimes up to a 14-foot clear zone, depending on what the traffic is on that road. We also do get limited by DNR sometimes, where if we'd want to go out 70 feet, well, now you need a purpose and need for that. If you're on a low-volume township road, you don't need an 18-foot clear zone like you would on a higher volume highway, so they don't feel that that's justified, which kind of follows. That's the practice I usually do. On low-volume roads, 10 foot's the bare minimum that like to build out and try to keep like at least a 3-to-1 or 4-to-1 slope so a car isn't going to totally lose control and go over into that. If there was something that the municipality wanted to put guardrail on a project like that, it would even be eligible to go back through the program because it's on a facility, so that would be an option, but the municipality, they're the owners of it.
Oh, okay.
So they would have to bring that. I wasn't aware of any petition or any public. I'm assuming that probably went through
Yeah,
through
it's
the
over
municipality.
by Citgo Bar, and
Yep.
they had generated 80-some signatures, and they said that during whiteout situations, it was hard to navigate that. They were afraid of for
Okay.
safety purposes.
And there's other mitigations. Guardrail's one thing, but guardrail also can present its own hazards and challenges. And there's other lower cost mitigation too that might be a
So that was
might be a solution.
that was on Cronenwetter, not the county.
Yeah, we did the work out there, and we did help size that. I want to say those were 58-foot culverts that went in on there for length, and they were extended out quite a bit from what was the existing out there.
So should the Cronenwetter consider the issue resolved and not pursue any more action for Guardrail, in your opinion? Do you think that it's safe as is?
I'd have to go revisit it. That was probably a handful of years ago that one went in.
Because the folks that were petitioning and upset went to the village and they said, we ain't gonna do anything, and they weren't gonna spend the $10,000 to put the guardrails up or something to that effect.
We do not oversee or have a hierarchy above the municipalities on their roads, because we get quite a few calls where people will call in and have comments on their roads, and we're not Big Brother on that. They kind of, we'll help share our knowledge and take a look at things. I was just out, drove through a road for the town of Weston the other day, they wanted, hey, could you take a 5-minute look at this? And I was driving through and gave them some feedback on it. But when residents call, we don't have any authority to tell the townships or municipalities what they should be doing on their roads.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
All
Sorry.
right, any
Just
other,
for-
yeah, Supervisor Hardinger?
Thank you, Chair. Just for my own curiosity, you said there were other better alternatives, or not better, more cost-effective alternatives to a guardrail. So just to satisfy my curiosity, what would those be?
Oh, he mentioned their concern is during whiteout, being able to see through there for visibility. There's simple signage that we could put up, either they're tiger boards, they call them, the black and yellow stripe markers to help visualize that. There's reflectors, there's delineators. So if their concern is, especially winter driving, being able to navigate through there.
So
So
not a physical barrier, be a visual.
yeah, there would be more of a visual
That's
for
my-
the drivers. Otherwise, no, a guardrail is probably the most cost-effective if you want a physical barrier to stop somebody there.
Thank you.
I don't know, but I guess I took another picture of Maple Ridge when, in my mind, I was saying, well, one's a culvert on Pioneer Road and the other's a span on Maple Ridge. And they do have a guardrail on the Maple Ridge one, but not on the Pioneer Road. So I guess I was, in my mind, saying, well, if it's a clear span, then they have to have guardrails. I don't know if that's,
And a lot of it does, like Kevin mentioned, come back to traffic volume. When we do bridges right now, we're eliminating a lot of guardrail. I mean, there's a railing on the bridge, but guardrail leaning into them. If there's less than 450 cars a day, we very seldom put up guardrail at this point. We're extending, like Kevin mentioned, we're extending them out farther. You know, the $10,000 you mentioned, you ain't gonna put up the guardrail for $10,000. The 4 ends will run you $12,000 just for the ends. That's just the crash ends that you need to put on. They're about $3,000 a piece, so you're not gonna touch it for 10.
that's what the people were, the information they have, which,
Thank you. I just want to caution, that's something that's not particularly on the agenda. So if you have any other questions, I guess you could speak to Kevin or Jim after the meeting if you would, unless it's something to do with the aid, the bridge aid or culvert aid.
It actually does. You said we had a surplus in our safety budget. Wasn't that brought up earlier in the meeting? We have a amount of money sitting aside in the safety budget that we haven't utilized, or did I miss it?
No, we have no safety budget.
Okay. Safety, yeah.
We have a lot of needs, no budget.
Got it, okay.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Any other discussion? Otherwise, we'll move on to number 8, announcements. Are there any announcements from the committee? Jim, go ahead.
Just for anybody's information, the Wisconsin County Highway Association, Kevin Koth from Donna Kotze from Waukesha County was on the Wisconsin County Highway Association board. She did not win her election, so the Central District for the Wisconsin County Highway Association is looking for a board member if anybody's interested. We have monthly meetings except the month of December. There's some travel in it, most of the meetings. have been moved to Stevens Point. There's a meeting twice a year in Wisconsin Dells, part of the conference, and then there's one in April and one in October, part of commissioner training, and that moves around the state. But we do have somebody interested from Waukesha County, but if anybody's interested in serving that on that committee, I need to know before Tuesday when the election is.
Thank you. So if anyone's interested, contact Jim. Any other announcements? All right, the 8A, our next meeting is scheduled for July 7th at 9 o'clock. And if there's any items you would like on the agenda, I'll let myself know or Jim know. We'll move on to number 9, adjournment. Motion by Supervisor Dickinson. Second by Supervisor Robinson. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
I
Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you. And Jim, by the way, I wasn't on the ice cream runs, but I do remember when we used to have donuts here at Infrastructure, so.